Welcome back to episode 2 of the Pick and Debate podcast. Today we're answering the question, what is the greatest NBA dynasty of all time? Joseph, are you ready for this?
Yes, I am.
All right. So, my claim is that the 2015 to 2022 Warriors are the greatest NBA dynasty of all time. What about you, Joseph?
And my claim is the 90s Bulls is the greatest dynasty of all time.
All right. Would you like me to expand on my point first, or do you want to go for it?
You can go first.
All right, yeah. So my position is that the Golden State Warriors are the greatest NBA dynasty of all time, and I'm evaluating that based on what makes a basketball dynasty great. That be adaptability, era, difficulty, innovation, and sustained excellence, not popularity or other unrelated factors outside of basketball.
Okay.
So,
Could you elaborate a little bit on what you find, like how do you define a dynasty?
how do I define a dynasty?
Yes.
A dynasty would be a period in which a team has sustained excellence for a long period of time.
Okay.
Do
All
you,
right.
would you agree with that?
To some point.
To some point.
Do you want to hear my how I would?
Sure.
I think how I would define a great dynasty.
Well, wait, hold on.
I mean, I guess that.
Are we defining a dynasty or a great dynasty?
Well, do you believe the Warriors is a great dynasty or just a dynasty?
The Warriors were a great dynasty. I'm
Okay,
arguing
so
that the
how would
Warriors
you define a
are the
great?
greatest.
Okay, so how would you define the greatest dynasty then?
I would define the greatness of a dynasty by adaptability, era difficulty, innovation, and sustained excellence. Again, not popularity or other unrelated factors outside of basketball.
Okay. Would you include winning titles over multiple years? Would you include that in your definition?
I would include that under probably sustained excellence. The reason that they are considered a dynasty is because they won 6 championships, and the same reason the Warriors are considered a dynasty because they won 4 championships.
Okay. All right. Would you also agree that they sustained dominance over many years against elite teams in the league, other teams in the league that were elite?
Would I agree what based on that?
That a great dynasty, the greatest dynasty.
I mean, I would argue that both the Warriors and the Bulls were dominant against elite teams. I would argue the Warriors played against more elite teams in a more competitive era and a more competitive pool of teams. But I would say that they both played against good teams for a sustained period of time. And so, yeah, I think that contributes to both dynasties' greatness.
Okay. I guess my question is how are your teams more elite? If you could elaborate with that.
How is the dynasty of the Warriors? How do they face tougher competition? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, you said they faced more elite teams.
Yeah.
I was wondering what teams was that?
Well, think about the Warriors era's opponents, right? We're talking about LeBron James super teams with the Heat and the Cavs. We're talking about OKC with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. The Spurs dynasty with Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili.
Well, the Warriors, they never. Wait, hold on. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but they
Sure.
never faced the Heat. LeBron, that was not a part. When did the Warriors dynasty start in your eyes?
I suppose, yeah. I suppose if you consider 2014 to be the 2015 to be the start, which is what I said, then yeah, I guess in the Heat, LeBron does not count. So let's discount that.
Okay, anyways,
that's a fair clarification.
So you got LeBron and the Cavs.
Okay, LeBron and the Cavs. We got OKC, Kevin Durant, and Russell Westbrook. We have the Spurs dynasty with Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. We have the Houston Rockets with James Harden, and also that specifically being with the the GM of the Morey ball kind of optimization system with heavily analytics driven basketball, which was an innovation of the game, right? We're talking about the Clippers with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, right? We have the Memphis Grit and Grind. We've got also just other teams with a lot of depth being Boston, Toronto, Milwaukee emerging in the East, and Denver, Phoenix, Dallas, and other teams in the West. That is competition that the Bulls never faced, and frankly, it's the most stacked era of superstar talent and team construction in league history when the Warriors dynasty occurred. And when we look at the Bulls era's opponents, we're looking at teams like the the aging Pistons, the aging Celtics, the Knicks, who had elite
Well,
defense but limited
we don't need to
offense.
get to Bulls. I want to hear more about your elite teams. So what teams would you say was the toughest competition for the Warriors, like playoff runs and all that?
What
Like
teams?
which ones were? Yeah,
It would be the teams that I've just listed. Would be their toughest competition. I'm
the
not.
main ones. Okay.
I'm
All right.
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
So I guess what I'm wondering is why are these teams more elite than
Yeah,
the ones in the 90s?
yeah. So when we're looking at the Bulls eras, opponents, right?
I can name the 90s Bulls teams for you if you
Uh,
like, but I just wanted to more know
So
why
so in
is
right. So in order to compare the Warriors competition to the Bulls competition, we also need to establish the Bulls competition. I can't compare them unless I list the Bulls competition. So that's what I'm doing
okay.
right now.
Well, I do want to know because I know you do take the stance that your era was more difficult
Yeah.
than back in the 90s, and I
It,
was wondering
it-
why that is.
okay, so you're not asking about 90s competition, you're asking about era difficulty.
Yeah, I don't want to get to I don't want to get to the 90s teams yet. I want to understand why
So
your era is more difficult.
so just to clarify, you don't want to talk about why the Bulls
No,
opponents
I
were
will
easier,
talk about it, but
but
I want
first
to more
first you want to
focus.
talk about era difficulty.
I want to actually focus on why your era is more difficult.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, we kind of talked about this in last debate as well with the Curry Magic, right?
Well, yeah, I remember you know about there was no zone defense allowed
Yep.
in the 90s, right?
Exactly, yes.
But in my I guess how I see it is saying it was easier because there was no zone defense in my eyes just isn't true. In the 90s, you had to guard your man like straight up with hand checking, constant contact, and a packed paint. You
Yeah.
couldn't hide like weak defenders in a zone or sit in like a help all possession.
You couldn't because it was
If you,
illegal.
it,
It,
but if you doubled, you had to fully commit, which made defense actually more physical, not softer.
yeah.
Zone defense today actually helps defenses by protecting players and forcing the ball out of the Stars' hands. Jordan was getting hit on every drive and still averaged 30.
Yeah.
With today's with today's spacings and rules, he'd actually score more. That is why we actually see higher scoring games now, more averaging around 130, 140. Back then, it was more 80 to 90, but Jordan actually still averaged 30.
So I'd like to ask you something, very specifically, because to me it sounds like you're making an argument for Michael Jordan being the greatest player of all time. Michael Jordan was a part of the Bulls,
Well,
but
not just Michael, but I'm focusing on I'm focusing on Michael because he was the star of my dynasty. It's just an example, but I can go on
yeah,
to my other player and also every other '90s team and their star players.
yeah.
But I'm focusing mostly on the Bulls and Jordan, and I don't know. I see it more as they scored less because it was tougher defense in my eyes. So
Okay,
I just yeah.
sure. So yeah, I mean, we're looking at the Warriors who faced hybrid zones, box and ones, triangle and two, top lock, right? Show and recover from 30 feet out, blitzing ball screens, weak side stunts, nail help, scream switches, ice coverage, drop coverage, and hedging at half court. None of which the Bulls saw. You know why? Because it was illegal. The Bulls faced straight up man. They had late help, predictable rotations, no zones, no hybrid coverages, no early help, and no switching 1 through 5. You couldn't do any of it. I don't see how that could possibly mean that defense was somehow harder. You can say it's more physical, but it was not more complex. It is the simplest era of NBA defense, and that is a fact.
I guess I'm wondering then why do we see higher scoring games now if defense is harder now?
More efficient scorers, the revolution of the offensive schemes in modern NBA.
Really, because if I look across just alone on my Bulls roster, the main Michael Jordan throughout his career averaged 48% field goal. Scottie Pippen 46. And then I can go on with other stars from the 90s, but in all honesty, percentages have kind of stayed the same besides 3-point, but we all know 3-point wasn't really revolutionized in the game till your era, but
Yeah.
field goal percentage has not really changed. It's just more shots are taken now
Uh,
because defense has changed.
so I would like to really point out that the reason more shots have been taken is not because defense is simpler and not easier to play against. Defense has got far more complex. And I'd like to reference the earlier point that you said that, you know, Michael Jordan was still getting these stats against man defense, which made it harder for him physically. But the thing is we're talking about an era which defenses are allowed to be schemed exactly to stop one player with zones. Again, we've seen multiple instances. We talked about this last debate. Stephen Curry getting double covered, you know, in zones, and that's just not something that Michael Jordan faced. He just didn't. So I'm confused how your argument that man defense somehow is elevating the individual success
I
of
don't
every
understand
single
how
player.
you are ignoring the fact that you were still allowed to double, and when you did, you had to fully commit, which actually made the defense more physical. So
It
not softer.
yes, if you have to fully double commit. What you've just said is a it makes it more difficult for the defense if you have to fully commit to the 2-on-1. Now we're talking about a set in stone 4-on-3.
I don't see that this I don't think they even needed this now new perfect spacing or rule advantages.
So you admit it is rule
I
advantages because this entire time you've argued that defense was more difficult in the 90s, but now you're
No,
talking about rule
I'm talking
advantages.
about your zone defense.
Yeah.
Your zone defense actually makes it easier to score.
So then why does every team in the modern NBA run it?
They're higher scoring games. It's higher scoring games.
Why
it just
does
comes down to
if
who scores more at the end.
Yeah, that's how every basketball game has worked ever.
Okay, but if you look back at the 90s, it would be lucky to see 80 scores like in a game. Because defense was played a lot tougher.
It was played tougher physically because you were able to, you know, hand check more and things of that nature. But the defense was far simpler. It just was due to the way that the NBA was set up. It just was. And so you're talking about these field goal percentages.
You say it just was. It doesn't make it.
You're talking about.
I honestly I don't see how it is
okay
tougher in your eyes when people are in your era are able to take. You even said they're able to take more shots and they're able to score more.
Yes, because of the evolution of the offensive schemes of modern NBA teams.
It was harder to score back then. It was harder to score, yet the Bulls roster Michael averaged 30. Scottie averaged 28. I don't understand how you can sit here and say
can you please explain? Can you please explain?
Softer.
I didn't say it was softer. I did not say that the 90s was softer. I said it was less complex. I said it was simpler.
I don't want to go into the route of also all the foul calling that has happened from the 2010s on. But back then, there was no such thing as these flagrant and like it was hard to even get that.
Michael Jordan was at the free throw line all the time.
Do I need to bring up the bad boy Pistons and all those hard big men defenses in the 90s that could hit you to the ground? I don't.
It was more physical.
I don't see how.
It was more physical, but it was far simpler. It just was. Again, I can reiterate if you like. The Warriors faced against everything switching constantly. All the defense switching constantly. Their formation and their scheme. We're talking about hybrid zones, box and ones, triangle and two, top lock, show and recover from 30 feet out, blitzing ball screens, nail helps, screen switches, ice coverage, drop coverage, hedging at half court. None of which the Bulls
yet every
faced.
team is able to score over 120 per game.
So explain to me if the defense is worse now than it was was then. If man-to-man defense is truly a better defensive system, it is a more effective
Well,
defense. Why is
I
it
want to
that
know, but
every modern NBA team,
field goal percentage has not changed over the
because
years.
the
The
types
only
of
thing that
shots
has
at the
changed is The only thing that has changed is 3-point percentage. But shots have stayed the same, except now people are able to score more.
because
That
offense is
doesn't that
better.
doesn't I don't see how that shows better defense through
If
zone
we want to look at it
defense.
from this simple side by side comparison, then that also is running under the assumption that offense has not changed, and it has. It's changed substantially from the 90s to the 2010s 2020s. And if you're going to deny that, I'm not sure what to say to you. I think you need to watch more basketball.
I just don't agree with you. I don't agree with you that you sit here and say, "Oh, this era is harder than the other." Like every era had its vices. I don't.
So let me try and just say it in a different way, okay? Because I think maybe you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. The Warriors adapted to the most complex defensive system era ever, the most complex defensive era ever. Okay, the Bulls dominated the most physical. It was more physical than when the Warriors dynasty occurred, but it is also the simplest defensive era ever, in that it was straight up man. You had late help, predictable rotations, no zones, no hybrid coverages, no early help, no switching 1-on-5, and you have to fully commit to a double team, like you said, and also not to mention no 3 in the key for defenders. We're talking about execution difficulty versus problem solving difficulty, okay? What the Bulls faced was execution difficulty. It's how hard is it to physically perform the solution once you've found it. Now, what we're talking about with the Warriors, with problem solving difficulty, because the defense is so much more complex, is how hard is it to find the solution in the first place. So in the 90s, the execution might have been harder physically, but the decision tree was far simpler. While in the modern era, the execution might be easier because of fouls and physicality, but the decision tree is exponentially more complex due to the zones that you can run. It's just true.
You twist it and make how the 90s did not allow zone, and you had to sit. Hold on, and you had to stay with man to man was almost a blessing for them. But honestly, the illegal defense rules, defenders couldn't just sit and help or zone up. They had to actually fully commit to their man, recover perfectly, and double at the exact right moment, or give up an open shot. On-ball defense was harder because hand checking and body contact were allowed. They were allowed. It was tougher. Cutters got hit. Bigs waited in a packed paint with no defensive 3-second rule. That actually proves that defense got away with a lot more, made it tougher, made it harder. That shows the less scoring in every game.
Yeah, it was.
Teams ran complex rotations out of hard doubles, strong side overloads, and trap schemes, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah. I think we agree with each other right now. You've just said that defense was harder to play back then. Okay, I agree.
But you're saying it looks simpler because it's not like spread out like it is today, and you're seing all these three-point shots.
It was simpler.
That doesn't mean it was easier. It meant defenders had to like.
Can I ask you a question? What is more difficult, simple or complex? What is more difficult to execute on, a simple system or a complex system?
Well, what system are we talking about?
Any system at all.
Well, I need to know what I need to know what system you're talking about before
any
I
system.
Agree with something.
Basketball aside, what is harder to execute? Something that is complex or something that is simple?
I'm going to let you answer that because
something that's complex.
I don't know what you mean.
It's simple. Something that's complex is automatically harder to execute. Yes, the defense back then was simpler, and it's not because everybody made it simpler. It's because the NBA was set up in a way where it forced it to be simpler. The rules constricted.
It meant defenders literally had nowhere to hide, and they had to actually win on their matchup every time and every possession.
Which made it far easier for offenses to score in the man-on-man setup. It just did.
Interesting. Compared to how much they're scoring now.
How much they're scoring now because of the development of the offensive game. Again, if you have not seen the development of the offensive game in the last 30 years, I don't know what kind of basketball you're watching. It's totally different. Offense is far more efficient. It just is all across the court. And you can say, oh, but a 3-point wasn't there back then. Exactly. That's exactly the point. When you have the 3-point threat, it opens up the entire half court in ways that it never did before. That's exactly the point.
Well, talking about my dynasty, offense was. I did want to bring up actually. I think it is a good point that Phil Jackson's. I mean, it was a revolution. Like he revolutionized the game in the '90s with his offense that the league has never seen before, and actually has carried over to now with his biggest one was I'm sure you've heard of it, the triangle offense.
Yeah, that would be the system that the Bulls ran throughout their entire dynasty.
Yes. Um, I,
So you say that Phil Jackson created the triangle system. That is not true.
well, no, I never said he didn't create it. No. He used it. He's the one who he made it big. I mean, before it,
he
I
didn't.
mean,
It was well established before Phil Jackson used it.
Then how did it work so well with him then? That's what I'm
because
saying.
he executed it perfectly.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Okay, so you're saying he executed an existing system well. Yeah, I agree. That's why they won 6 rings.
Better than anyone in the 90s.
Yeah, that's why they won 6 rings.
I want to. Okay, we've been talking about this for a long time. I do want to actually move on to. I did want to name some of the teams because you got to name yours. I do want to name some of the teams the Bulls did match up against. Just in case if you think the teams they didn't play were elite. I know you said they were good teams, but I think they more deserve the elite status.
Okay.
We can start with where it all kind of began at the 90s, where the Bulls were able to take down the Detroit Pistons, bad boy Pistons, which included Hall of Famers like Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Bill Laimbeer. They were actually back-to-back champions, and they were the most physical team ever. And they were actually the ones who created the popular, Jordan rule. Except the Bulls ended that dynasty. Then we got the Showtime Lakers kind of on their end, but you can't ignore the fact that it is including brought them to the finals. It was 1991 finals. This was the Bulls' first win against Hall of Famer Magic Johnson, James Worthy, Sam Perkins. Ended that dynasty, Bulls in 5. Then you got the next year, Portland Trailblazers, 1992 finals, Hall of Famer Clyde Drexler, now 63 win team. That's nothing to also at that time, Drexler was even compared to Jordan. That comparison was ended pretty fast because they beat them in 4. Then next year, Phoenix Suns, Hall of Famer Charles Barkley, his MVP year. It was a 62-win team, and Jordan averaged 41 points per game, and Scottie 28 that finals, and they three-peated. Okay. That's where the first half of the dynasty, I would say, where they three-peated. But I don't want to talk too much about that. We can go back to
So I'm
why your team is greater.
I'm kind of confused what you're doing right now. You've just read out every title of the Bulls, and I don't necessarily know what that proves.
Well, I don't want you. I wanted to put this out there right now before you try to discredit that they didn't play against elite teams, because you did say good teams, but I just wanted to prove that
the
teams they played against were no joke. It wasn't. Okay.
The Bulls played against elite teams in the context of their era, but the Warriors faced more elite teams than any dynasty ever has.
I mean,
we're looking at the era of the Warriors dynasty is the most stacked era of superstar talent and team construction in league history. I don't know how you can contest that. It's just the reality of the modern NBA.
Okay.
I mean, when the Bulls played, they did win 6 championships. But you have to consider that there were fewer contenders and there was just less talent concentration.
I wasn't done with the contenders. I wasn't done.
Okay.
There's more if you want to hear more.
Sure.
Okay. So you got 95, 96. The best team in the Western Conference was the Seattle Sonics with Hall of Famer Gary Payton. who's known as the greatest defensive point guard, I would argue. Then you also had Sean Kemp, a big man. They had, let's see, I think they had, it was a 64 win. They were actually the best defensive team in the NBA at the time, and they still lost. Never saw a game 7. I want to also just add that the Bulls never saw a game 7 ever in the finals. Let's see, they also, Orlando Magic. They played the Orlando Magic. Now they did when I will say so when Michael, went away for baseball and came back. He came back very late in the season, joined the playoffs, and they actually did lose to the Magic. That was like I think it was rookie year of Shaquille O'Neal on Magic. But then next year they bounced back 95-96. Arguably the best team of all time, 72-10, and they swept them 4-0.
No.
They also played against the Knicks.
That was a 4-2 win against the Sonics in the finals that year.
No, I was saying they swept the Orlando Magic.
You just said that the 95
I said 4-0
96
Magic
when they went 72-10. That was against the Sonics, which was a 4-2 win.
Yeah, no, it was first round against the Magic. First round. Yeah, no, I said first round. They played the Sonics in the finals.
What is sweeping a team in the first round of the playoffs? What is that? I'm confused with. What are you?
Oh no! I wanted to name these great teams that were developed in the league. The Orlando Magic, they actually were championship contenders, more almost as favored as the Bulls, and they came back and swept them. I just wanted to name a very.
They came back and swept them, or they swept them. What?
Shaquille O'Neal in the 90s.
The Magic were not a powerhouse.
They came back and swept them. They lost the. Okay, I mean,
in the era, the Magic.
That's your opinion.
But
anyways, and then they won the finals. They won that. I don't know why you're arguing with the Magic. I'm not talking about the Magic anymore. I'm talking about the Bulls and how they beat the Sonic 4-2.
Yeah, but you talked about how they beat the Orlando Magic 4-0. You're the one who made it relevant to the conversation.
I feel like naming the Magic is an important part in the 90s.
Okay.
That was a big moment for Michael Jordan when he came back and beat the team that beat him when he came back from baseball.
Yes, it was a big moment for Michael Jordan. But
okay,
it doesn't make
you're grilling me on this.
It doesn't make the Bulls dynasty greater.
It's not going to help you, and it's not going to help you in your point. That wasn't even. I was just naming a fact that they played a great team. Magic was a great team.
Okay, you can keep reading your final stats. Go ahead.
Anyways, and then they played back-to-back, both finals against the Utah Jazz, and we know how that went down. Beat them both twice. They had Hall of Famers like Karl Malone, who was also two-time MVP, and then they had John Stockton, who was one of the best point guards of all time. Mm-hmm. Again, never saw a Game 7. And the Bulls, their dynasty ended 1998, and they won 6 championships in 8 years, and they never lost in the finals, and then they never saw Game 7 in the finals, and they had one of the best records of all time, 72-10.
So okay, I do appreciate you bringing that up, but frankly, the Warriors went 73.
That's how I am right there. So I don't see how a Warriors team. I don't see how a Warriors team who's won 4 rings after also losing let's see, twice in the finals.
Yeah.
I don't see how that is better.
Well, the Warriors face the highest era difficulty of any
shot.
The Warriors face the highest era difficulty of any dynasty.
Oh, you're going back to that, I see. Okay.
Well, here's the thing. Do
you have any other points? Is that your point you're going to keep?
So I'm about to explain myself and about to go into my points, and you're just talking over me.
This is the point you keep drilling, but do you have anything else?
So you've just
because I feel like I feel like we've talked about that for a while.
You've just said you can go on ahead and try, but then you've just talked over me as soon as I go ahead and try. So do you want me to go ahead and try, or do you want to keep talking?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, so the Warriors face the highest era difficulty of any dynasty in NBA history. And era difficulty is a core component of dynasty greatness because it measures how strong the league was, how many elite teams existed, right, and how advanced the strategies were, and how hard it was to sustain success for those reasons, right? The Warriors dominated the deepest, the smartest, the most talent dense, and the most analytically optimized era the NBA has ever seen, ever. It's not even close. The Bulls dominated an era with simpler defenses and fewer contenders. That's how it's more impressive. Yes, they didn't win as many, and their conversion rate was not as high, but it's because the era was more difficult. And you have to look at it in that context. If you ignore that context, then yeah, then all of a sudden you can just say, oh, they have more rings, so it's more impressive, right? In the same way that we're comparing eras, you're saying
You need
that
to repeat that last line.
okay, so you're saying that the Bulls is more impressive because they won 6 finals in 8 years and the Warriors did not measure up to that. Is that correct? You're saying I don't see how that's better.
That is one factor. That's not all of it.
Well, it's what you've said, and you're saying that era comparison is unfair. But then can you explain to me why you're not arguing for the Celtics winning 11 finals in 13 seasons? Why are you not arguing for them?
You're going back 20 years back. This is the 90s. I'm not talking about the 70s. That's irrelevant.
So that was in the late 50s and in the 60s.
Oh, even farther back. That's even more relevant.
Yeah. So that's about a 30-year gap, which is about the same gap between the Warriors and the Bulls. And I will admit that the margin of difficulty from basketball from when Bill Russell played versus Michael Jordan, it is greater compared to when Michael Jordan played versus the Warriors dynasty. I mean, it's different. The margin isn't as big, but there's still a margin there. And to ignore that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. If you're gonna discard the Celtics because the NBA was different back then you need to consider the differences between the NBA then and the NBA now.
Okay, and because of that, I should believe that winning less in the finals and losing and blowing a 3-1 lead makes you a better dynasty?
No, but what it means is that winning 6 finals in 8 years doesn't necessarily automatically make you the greater dynasty. That's what it proves because it's in a different historical context.
What does in your eyes?
Well, I was just saying this, okay? The Warriors faced more elite teams in any dynasty ever, and they were still extremely dominant.
Okay. They didn't win as much.
So we neither the Bulls didn't win as much as the Celtics.
Sure, they played against in your words, they played against more elite teams, but they didn't win as much.
Because the teams were more elite. The competition was more fierce, and they were still dominant. That's what makes them greater. Yes, the Bulls were more dominant. The Bulls were more dominant in their era, but that doesn't make them greater. It makes them more dominant. Dominance is not the same as greatness.
Do you have any other points, or is this your main point?
The Bulls never faced the competition that the Warriors did in the finals, okay? The closest equivalent of LeBron James caliber in the finals was Karl Malone, which was the 1997-1998 Jazz, right? Would you agree? He was an MVP-level scorer, elite mid-range, threat. He's a strong pick-and-roll partner, especially with John Stockton.
I could make the same argument with the Phoenix Suns, Portland Trailblazers. I could make the same for even the Sonics. The Sonics were the second best team and the greatest defensive team in the league.
Karl Malone. I can make the same. Karl Malone is nowhere near LeBron James. Karl Malone was not.
I'm sorry, but are we also
playmaker? He wasn't a switch hunting engine. He wasn't a perimeter creator. He wasn't a.
Are we also forgetting that they also lost to the Raptors in the finals?
I'm confused what you're trying to prove.
And they also are the only team in history to blow a 3-1 lead in the finals. No other team has ever done that. I'm sorry, I don't understand how that's greatness.
Is that a reason to discount the Warriors dynasty because they lost a 3-1 lead?
Yeah, you can't finish the job and get the ring.
So here's the thing. You bring up the point that the Bulls, have never lost a game 7. And that is impressive.
They never saw a game 7. They never even saw one.
That's what I meant to say. That's a good clarification. I appreciate you pointing that out. Okay. So they never saw a game 7, right? Meaning that they convincingly won all their finals. And yes, that's impressive, but when you look at it in the context, to me, that makes me raise an eyebrow and say, well,
I also
doesn't
you also
that
you left out one thing. They also three-peated twice, which has also never been done before.
I didn't leave that out. I just
I just think
it's
that's
unrelated.
an
Okay,
important thing
so
to
I was in
note.
the middle of my point, and you've just talked with me in the middle of it, and I don't really appreciate that.
Well, you just left something out that I thought was important.
So I actually wasn't done speaking, and so there's no way for you to know that I wouldn't have finished saying that. But I do appreciate.
My apologies. My apologies. You can go ahead.
Okay, so we were talking about how the I need to recollect my thoughts here. Give me a moment. Oh yeah. So the game 7, right? The Bulls, they never saw game 7. Okay, and that is impressive. But to me, that makes me raise an eyebrow, and it makes me think, well, doesn't that kind of build onto my case that the era was not as fierce of competition, right? They never saw game 7 because they were dominant. They were the most dominant team in the league. But part of that is because they didn't have as much competition. It's just the truth of the era. It just is. And to deny that is to discredit all of modern basketball.
Honestly, you're almost pointing towards the Bulls there, saying that they were so dominant that no competition could compete with them.
Yes, they were the most dominant. They were more dominant in the Warriors in their era, but that doesn't make them greater. Dominance is not the same as greatness, and that is the essence of my argument. What I think defines greatness is being able to it's being able to beat tougher competition. You can point out the Warriors.
Okay, so
and say, team to blow a 3-1 lead, but you have to understand that the competition was far fiercer now than it was then.
All right, let me. All right, so this tougher competition. So their first championship was against injured Cavaliers team with only LeBron James, no Kyrie Irving, and no Kevin Love. Their 2 other star players. They won that. Okay. Then we go to the next one where a fully healthy LeBron team, the Warriors blow a 3-1 lead. I'm not going to talk more about that. And then after that, they recruit an already all-star developed player to then beat the LeBron team twice. And then as soon as that star player gets hurt, they lose to the Raptors. Okay. I don't. I mean, I see 3 rings there, but I mean,
I think you're forgetting. I think you're forgetting to mention the one in 2022.
I know. No, I forgot. 5 years later. 5 years later, after also 2 years before that being the worst team in the league. Then
you're bringing up the worst team in the league, but this is a time where Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson, the 2 cornerstones of the Warriors, were both injured. So I think that's kind of an unfair thing to bring up, is it not? And if anything, it actually
I think consistency.
It speaks to their success because they were able to come back and win a championship right after
against an injured Celtics team. Okay, I have another thing I wanted to talk about.
Well, but before we do that, because you did shift away from this conversation, I think at an inopportune moment for me, which is when you brought up Phil Jackson and how he ran the triangle defense, right? And you shifted towards finals right after that.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, and you read out every year that the Bulls have won the finals and what teams they beat, and also, how much they won by, which was good. But yeah, it was a shift from the conversation that we were having before, and I did want to speak about that a little bit, if that's okay. So
that's fine.
So yeah, the Bulls ran the triangle system right throughout their entire dynasty, and we did establish that Phil Jackson did not invent the system. That was a system that was invented in the 1940s, right, and was brought to the NBA by Tex Winter. So Phil Jackson,
he obviously made it work.
He implemented that system, right, and Jordan and Pippen
pretty well
executed it brilliantly, but it wasn't a new system, right? So the Bulls, I would consider them the best executors of the triangle system ever, meaning that they were the best executors of an existing idea, right? The Warriors, they were the architects of a new era. They invented the modern motion spacing hybrid system. They invented split cut offense. They invented the gravity based system, which is something we really haven't seen before in the way that the Warriors did it. They even invented the Draymond, short roll engine. They invented the small ball death lineup. as a sustainable strategy, as a winning strategy, which there were so many critics about that strategy when it was first being implemented. But it was so successful that we see teams implementing that system into their game now. The pace and space era's geometry, I mean they've completely changed basketball forever. And after the Bulls, frankly, the teams didn't change their roster
I could argue the
construction
same.
No, after the Bulls, no one said we need more mid-range scorers. We need to run the triangle offense. We need 2 long wings like Jordan and Pippen. The league did respect the Bulls, but it didn't reshape themselves around them. The Warriors, on the other hand, have entirely revolutionized the game of basketball.
Maybe it was because they couldn't execute it the way the Bulls could.
Yes, because they perfected a system.
Are you going to sit here and say that the Bulls, 90s Bulls, did not revolutionize the game as well?
I mean, not at all.
They both revolutionized the game, so I don't see an argument there.
Not at all in the same way that the Bulls did. Again, after the Bulls, teams didn't change their roster construction or defensive philosophy. No one said we need more mid-range scorers. I'll reiterate. No one said that we need to run the triangle offense, and no one said we need 2 long wings like Jordan and Pippen. Nobody was saying that in the same ways that the Warriors changed the league. The league did respect the Bulls, but they didn't reshape itself around them.
I did notice, though, you're talking about revolutionizing the game, but when I first had you at the beginning define what is the greatest dynasty, you never mentioned revolutionizing the game.
I actually did.
I'm wondering why you're now bringing that up as a point
I will restate my position exactly as I had it written, because I have it written here on a piece of paper. Are you ready?
Okay, please.
The Golden State Warriors are the greatest NBA dynasty of all times, and I'm evaluating that based on what makes Sorry, I need to repeat myself. The Golden State Warriors are the greatest NBA dynasty of all time, and I'm evaluating that based on what makes a basketball dynasty great. That being 1, adaptability, 2, era difficulty, 3, innovation. Innovation is revolution of the game. When you innovate the game, you inherently revolutionize it. That is what I said. I'm not bringing up a point now, and when I brought up that framework, you agreed to it prior. So if you're going to agree to it, then we now need to apply it to the standard of the Warriors and the Bulls.
What was that?
I said you.
I had my own. I had my own definition. I had my own.
So are you telling me that this entire debate, this last 45 minutes, when I gave the framework for the discussion, evaluating the Bulls,
I didn't add in revolutionizing the game, but I mean,
is innovation not greatness? You didn't have innovation in there. You didn't have revolution of the game in there. But how is innovation not greatness? And if you're going to say innovation isn't a part of greatness, then you need to prove why it's not.
Oh, I mean, innovation and revolutionizing, like the Bulls did that as well. And I could even argue culture, like impact, like on like future generations. I mean, yes, Curry inspired the future generation for sure, but so did Jordan and the Bulls. So he actually inspired global expansion of basketball. Before the 90s, it wasn't very global.
So I just like to interject here in that the framework that we had originally started the discussion on is that I was not basing my claim on popularity or other unrelated factors outside of basketball, and you're talking about cultural impact. That is unrelated to basketball.
Well, no, I was also talking about here's the thing though. I didn't include revolutionizing, or what was your other one?
I'm talking about adaptability, era difficulty, innovation, and sustained excellence is what makes a great dynasty.
Innovation too as well. I didn't include those, but
why?
If I had to, I can. If we're going to sit here and say the Bulls did not revolutionize, then I mean, I don't know why we're even here.
They didn't revolutionize basketball.
Yes.
The same way that the Warriors did. The same way that the Warriors did, absolutely not.
Okay, so just by revolutionizing, so what you're saying is then, maybe you're not, because the Warriors, and this is what you're quoting, revolutionized the game more, that makes them the greater dynasty.
It's one of the reasons. It's
even
with
one
of the contributing
championships.
Yes, it's one of the contributing factors that makes them a greater dynasty.
And less of a run.
Yes.
Less championships and less of a run, but because they revolutionized a little bit more, and this is what you're saying, That makes them a greater dynasty.
So I have a question for you, because you're trying to set me up into this framework, but we've already discussed this. Do you think that the Bulls revolutionized the game more than Bill Russell's Celtics? Do you? Yes or no?
Again, I don't understand how
Yes
Bill
or no?
Russell has anything to do with this.
It
No,
does. No.
I think that is irrelevant. I'm not gonna
If you
talk about
it's
a
entirely
relevant source.
it's entirely relevant, and you refusing to answer that, it's highlighting the exact flaw in the logic that you're trying to apply onto me.
No, I don't think it is. I just don't want to include Bill Russell
Why?
in the 60s.
I'm testing a logical framework. I'm testing a logical framework here that you're trying
That was
to
a
apply
completely
onto me.
different game. You know
How many teams were in the league at that time?
2010s.
12 teams.
Yes,
12 teams.
Yes, it's a different game, but you're saying, well, the Bulls, they have more rings, and you're saying that because the Warriors have a little bit more innovation but less rings, they're better. I could say the same exact thing for the Bulls. They had more innovation than the Celtics, but they have far less rings and a shorter run. It's the exact same logic, but you only apply it to the Bulls when it helps you. That's selective reasoning. You have to be consistent across.
Wait, hold on. I'm confused. The Bulls had a more successful run than you. I'm confused.
That's exactly what I'm saying. If by your argument, you're saying that the Celtics should be greater than the Bulls because they had a longer, more successful run than the Bulls did in terms of championships, even though the Bulls did innovate the game more than the Celtics did. It's exactly what you're saying. If you're going to apply this logical framework to me and say that the Bulls are better because of it, then you have to say that the Celtics are better than the Bulls.
No. Because you are now comparing this. That's unfair, because now you are comparing the 90s to the 60s, which, I'm sorry, anyone in their right mind could understand that is now a completely different game.
It's completely different, but it's also a completely different game from the 90s to the 2010s and the 2020s. The Warriors completely revolutionized basketball, dude. After the Warriors, the entire NBA changed. Every team now prioritizes shooting. Every team now prioritizes spacing. Every team now uses switching. Every team now uses 5-out principles. Every team now hunts mismatches. Every team now values versatility over size, and every team now uses analytics to optimize their shot profiles. It was not to this extreme before the Warriors did what they did. So, the Bulls defined their era. They defined it by dominating it, but the Warriors defined their era by creating it. They created the very system which defined their era. The Bulls just executed an already existing system. And I have a question for you. What's greater, creating an era or dominating it?
What do you think?
Creating an era is definitely greater than dominating it.
So what you're saying is then, because they so what if they won less rings? Just because they revolutionized, that means
they did. What do you
mean?
They
are greater. Well, rings? Your main point. So your main point through all of this, and is that because they revolutionized the game more, that just makes them a greater dynasty.
It is one of the things that makes them the greater dynasty. Yes, they revolutionized.
What is the other reason? What is the other reason? Because you have hammered that home for sure, but what are the other reasons?
Are we acting like this is all we've been talking about for 52 minutes? We've talked about far more than this.
Well, revolutionizing, and that it's harder now through all of that. Now I want to know what else, because I'm again just even looking throughout the years, I still just don't see it. I don't see how losing multiple times in the finals and then recruiting an already all-star who was already developed. And I do want to say the Bulls built their dynasty from the ground up through drafting. And if you're going to throw Dennis Rodman at me, he was a sixth man before he came to the Bulls. Anyways, but what the Warriors did is, all I see is they lost in the finals. They get this all-star to help them get two championships. They built their dynasty from the ground up through drafting. The Warriors, what they did, all I see is, first, they win against an already injured Cavs team. Then they lose to the fully healthy Cavs team. And then they draft an already fully developed all-star, gets them 2 wins. And then as soon as he gets hurt, they lose again. I just don't see greatness in that. I don't see greatness in losing. I see greatness in winning.
The greatness is in adaptability. And again, you say you see greatness in winning. Let's talk about the Celtics again. They won more than the Bulls. So you can say greatness means winning, but you can't do it selectively.
I don't think anyone is comparing Bill Russell's Celtics from the 60s to the Chicago Bulls in the 90s.
Why?
I don't think anyone's doing that but you.
Oh well, if we can't compare that, then we can't compare the Warriors and the Bulls because it's the same exact logic. Yes, it's a bigger margin, but it's the same logic. It's a contradiction. You're doing selective reasoning. You're saying it works for the Bulls and the Warriors, but it doesn't work for the Bulls and the Celtics. You need to then expand your argument if you're going to say that. You have to expand it. You can't just say more wins, they're better. That's so surface level. What I hear you saying is that the Boston Celtics 11 wins was not as impressive as the Bulls 6. Is that what
No. I actually hear. I do want to play your game, and I do want to talk about now the Celtics.
You don't agree with that?
So adamant about me comparing them to the Celtics.
Yes.
Now, first off, Bill Russell and the Celtics in the 60s and 70s played a completely different game.
Yes, I agree with you that the Celtics 11 wins is not as impressive.
But this
as
is not even comparable. This is nowhere near comparable to the jump from the 90s to your Warriors, from the 90s to the Boston Celtics. They played in an 8-team league, an 8 to 10 team league at the beginning with no free agency, minimal player movement, and multiple Hall of Famers stacked on the same roster every year, which happened to be the Celtics every year. The Bulls, they dominated a fully modern NBA 27, 29 teams.
It's not a modern NBA. It's a modern NBA team count. It's close to it, but it's not the modern NBA.
That Celtics team was grandfathered into their talent. They had a stacked team. It wasn't fair in the 60s and 70s. That's why no one mentions Bill Russell when it comes down to the top 10.
Yes, because the championships that they won were easier, right? That's exactly what I'm saying for the Bulls, and obviously the margin isn't as big.
You are comparing the 60s.
No, I'm not. I'm
comparing the 90s.
I'm comparing the logic. I'm comparing the logic.
You do realize, though, that jump from the 60s to the 90s is not comparable to the 90s to the 2010s.
Like I've said,
the 90s
it is much greater, but there is still a margin between the 90s and the 2020s. I mean, in the 2010s, you can look at the defensive schemes and the offensive schemes of the time, and they are completely different. The game of basketball is completely different on a fundamental level. It has completely changed. So yes, it's substantial. It's not as substantial as the Celtics and the Bulls, but it's still substantial. And if you want to say that the 6 wins is more impressive than the 4 wins, then you have to prove that. You have to prove that the in the same way that the Celtics were less impressive. That's what I'm saying for the Bulls. And now you have to prove that they aren't.
The Bulls played in the NBA comparable to the Bill Russell and the Celtics. They played in one that balanced NBA they balanced the NBA so it would avoid dynasties. How the Bulls happen is through drafting and building their dynasty. Your team lost 3-1 and then got an already all-star and then ended up losing him to cap space.
And I don't see how that's an argument that the Warriors are less great. I agree that the Warriors lost key contributors
the Bulls built their dynasty. You lost and tried to buy you lost and tried to buy your rings, honestly.
The Warriors lost key contributors across, I would say, multiple eras of their dynasty. I would say they had 3 main eras of their dynasty, that being before KD, with KD, and after KD, right? And they won championships during all of them. Okay, so yes, the Golden State Warriors lost major rotation pieces, core role players, and even superstars in KD, right, across their dynasty. We're talking about guys like Harrison Barnes, right, who was their starting wing.
I don't understand
Iguodala, who was a Finals MVP. Kevin Durant, who's probably a top 5 player in the world, right? Sean Livingston, who was a great bench guy, a great role player. Andrew Bogut, who was a defensive anchor. We're talking about Festus Azealis, who was a rim protector. David West, who was a veteran playmaking big. Otto Porter Jr., who was an elite spacer, rebounder, and versatile defender. I mean, despite losing all of these pieces across multiple eras of their dynasty, the Warriors still won championships. And that's the epitome. That is the epitome of dynasty level adaptability. They played with 3 different systems, 3 different types of games.
Besides KD, though, besides when you had KD, I don't understand how, you say you you played against such elite teams, but all those final appearances, the only ones you won were when the teams were injured or your players were injured. Is when you lost.
The Chicago's dynasty was built on continuity. Okay, they kept the same essential structure for 8 years, right? But it was not built on adaptability. And the core players who never left, right, during any other championship runs would have been Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. We've got Horace Grant for the first three-peat, right? And then we have Dennis Rodman for the second three-peat. Then we have Ron Harper, Steve Kerr, Bill Wennington, right? We're talking about a system stability where you have the same pace, same spacing environment, and same illegal defense rules.
And let's also not forget Phil Jackson, the greatest coach of all time, most rings.
Again, most rings, no. How about the Celtics?
I'm talking about coach.
Okay. So the thing is you're using this rings argument. More rings. I don't see how this makes them better. They have more rings. You're using more rings to define greatness. But then why are you discounting other teams who have more rings? And you can say it's because of the 60s, but then to that I say it's because of the 90s that the Bulls have more.
Oh. I mean, I've already named off all the elite teams they had to play against.
And it was nowhere close to the talent in the modern NBA.
Every single team they defeated and dominated are filled with Hall of Famers.
And you're saying that the Bulls, they built from the ground up, right? They built from the ground up, and that's great. And the Warriors had to use free agency. But if anything, that makes the Warriors situation even more difficult, because then it's not just the Warriors who are acquiring people through free agency. It's also every single other team in the modern NBA, and you have to acknowledge that. It's not just them, it's their competition as well.
I don't think we're going to come to an agreement. I wasn't expecting it, but...
You thought we were going to come to an agreement?
No, but I think it's time to make a closing, because I don't know. We're kind of going around in circles. Both of us are bringing up same points.
Sure. Would you like to do your closing angle first, or would you like me to go?
I'll let you go first.
All right. So my closing angle is that the Bulls dominated the era that they inherited. Okay. And the Warriors defined the era that everyone else had to adapt to. And that's the difference. My take is that Chicago mastered a stable environment. Okay. And that Golden State bastard and reshaped the most complex era basketball has ever seen. The Bulls, they may have had the most iconic player ever. They may have the cleanest finals record. They have the most nostalgia behind them, probably. They have the most, mythologized coach and system in basketball. And they're probably beloved in a way that the Warriors aren't and never will be, right? By most people, I would say. And they also perfected the triangle system. But they executed a system that already existed in a league that wasn't built to stop it, with rules that made physicality the primary defensive tool, which made stopping the triangle defense difficult. The Warriors reinvented how basketball is played, and they forced the league to change its geometry, its spacing, its defensive schemes, its roster construction, and its entire understanding of offensive value. They won with 3 different versions of themselves, pre-KD, with KD, and after KD, in the deepest, smartest, most analytics-driven era the sport has ever seen. And if the only way to judge the Bulls dynasty is by the standards of the 90s, then that proves exactly what I'm saying, in that they're the greatest of their era and not the greatest of all eras of all time. And after all, the debate we're having is what the greatest dynasty of all eras, isn't it?
Well, I do want to also say, I would say probably the greatest, on the Warriors, their greatest year was the 73-9, and they couldn't finish. They couldn't close it out. You say like this first. You also say this first win. They won before KD. Again, you keep ignoring the fact you ignore it that they played against the injured Cavs team who didn't have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love.
The Warriors,
All-stars.
The Warriors have dealt with injuries through their entire dynasty. They have. They've dealt with far more injuries and far more losses of players than the Bulls. They've adapted in ways that the Bulls never had to due to roster changes and injuries. That's just true. Historically, that's true. And you said to give my closing angle, but now are you going to give your closing angle, or are you going to bring another point of the 73-9?
I think really at the end of the day, this debate just comes down to results. I mean, I know you're going to throw the Bill Russell card at me, but I don't think that's comparable at all. and I think no one is comparing the Bulls to that. But the Bulls won 6 titles in 8 years, repeated twice, which has never been done before. Warriors didn't do that, and they never lost in the finals. Even your friend Bill Russell lost in the finals, and the Warriors definitely lost in the finals. The Bulls never lost. They beat Hall of Famers every single round. Every round they played had a Hall of Famer on that team. Just wanted to point that out.
So
Um,
I agree with you, but I also
hold
would
on,
like
let
to
me.
point
I
out
let you say your whole thing.
the Warriors' modern dynasty has not given enough time to give these teams that they played against Hall of Fame titles. The
Well,
players
no,
just
that
haven't
is
had the
that is just
opportunity.
I wanted to
Okay,
add that point
because
because you love saying
it's the
how
cherry on top.
they weren't elite.
The
No,
candy
that they
sprinkles on
weren't
top of the
elite
cookie,
teams. You
right?
love saying how they weren't elite teams, but you ignore the fact that
They were
they
elite
include
teams for
Hall of
their era,
Famers.
but not elite teams compared to the modern NBA. That has been my take the entire time. But go ahead.
The Warriors did have incredible peaks, but they also lost on the biggest stage many times and needed Kevin Durant to recover. Great seasons don't beat sustained championship dominance. The Bulls are the standard for the greatest dynasty.
So your argument then would be that sustainability is greater than adaptability and innovation.
I'm leaving it how I said it.
Okay, that's how I hear it in your words. So I'm going to assume that you agree with what I've just said. But to that, I would say that the Bills would then be considered under that framework as greater than the Chicago Bulls of the '90s. But that's my take, and what we've been
That
talking
is
about
your
the
take
entire
at
time.
the end of the day.
Well, I guess I don't know. Do you have any last words? Any last things that you'd like to say before we wrap up the episode?
No.
All right. Well, I would say the way that I define
At the end of the
dominance.
day, bro, it's always potatoes, and
Don't bring that potatoes nonsense. Come on, man.
at the end of the day,
Hey,
it's all fun and games.
it's like
and
comparing apples and oranges, right?
apples and oranges.
Well, my last thing that I'd like to say is I think
I also want to say, anyone who's watching, I hope you guys are all impressed. I feel like I've shown great improvement from my last one, and I wanted to make up for that.
yeah, let's give Joe a round of applause. I would agree with that as well.
Yeah. And also all the Curry fans that maybe or like will future like in the future like attack me. I just want to say that I mean I started loving basketball because of Curry and the Warriors. So, anyways.
All right, yeah. Yeah, I think my last words would be, that the Bulls, they didn't lose any key pieces year to year. They didn't have to reinvent themselves in the ways that the Warriors did, and they didn't have to adapt to roster validity in the way that the Warriors did. And their dynasty was built on continuity, but not adaptability, right? And to me, dominance is how well you perform in one environment, which the Bulls did better than anyone ever, and it's not even close. But to me, greatness is how many environments you can dominate, which the Warriors did better than the Bulls because they played in more environments.
Okay.
So my take would be, the Warriors succeeded before KD, with KD after KD, and the Bulls succeeded in one core version of themselves through their entire dynasty.
I think that's a little. They did have different versions of themselves. I wouldn't.
Not the changes in the versions, nothing close to the Warriors.
I would
the
say they
roster
were.
changes, the system changes. Every era within the
I mean, you
within the
do
Warriors
realize
dynasty.
when with the roster change, they did at the time become the greatest team of all time with the greatest record of all time. I mean, that is a big change from before and after Michael came back.
Yes, but it's nowhere close to the amount of changes that the Warriors had on their team.
Okay.
It's fundamentally true if you look at the teams over the years of their dynasty. But yeah, so my take would be that, if your dynasty collapses when the roster changes, then that's not greatness, that's dependence. That the Warriors reinvented themselves 3 times, and the Bulls perfected one version of themselves. But to me at least, stability is what creates dominance, and adaptability is what creates greatness. And for that reason, I think that the Warriors are the greatest dynasty of all time. That's all I have to say.
That's a fair point.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching episode 2. We appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't already, be sure to check out episode 1, where we debate the, Curry versus Magic, greatest point guard of all time. If you'd like to leave a comment, we'll be sure to get back to you. And if you have
And
any
if
ideas
you
for a
guys
debate,
want, you can give recommendations if you
by all
of
means,
future debates.
we read all the comments and everything like that. We will continue to do that in the future. So not like we're getting a ton of comments. The last one had, I think, a couple comments from people, but we'd be sure to read those. And yeah, if you guys have any
Hey, it got more
recommendations
views
for-
than I thought it would. It was actually pretty good.
Yeah, the support's been awesome. If you guys have any ideas for debates or anything that you want to hear us go head to head on, let us know and we'll take it into consideration. But yeah, until next time, we'll see you later.
See ya.